3 years ago, I measured the tomatoes coming out of my raised bed, and they averaged about 6 ounces per fruit. Last summer, after completely overhauling my soil using methods I picked up from my Amish neighbor, Eli, those same varieties were coming in at 12 to 14 ounces. Same beds, same seed packet, same amount of water. The only thing that changed was what I did to the dirt before anything ever went into the ground. And here is what gets me. I had been adding fertilizer and amendments for over 20 years, spending real money every single spring, and my results were just okay. Not bad, not great. Meanwhile, Eli's garden looked like something out of a seed catalog. His cabbages were the size of basketballs. His sweet corn was a full head taller than mine. Everything he grew just had this deep green vigor that my plants never quite matched. And the man had never once bought a bag of commercial fertilizer in his life. I finally asked him about it one afternoon while we were sitting on his porch shelling beans. He just sort of smiled and said, "You keep feeding the plant. I feed the soil." That simple sentence turned 30 years of what I thought I knew completely upside down. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly what Eli and other Amish growers do to their soil that makes everything grow so much bigger and more productive. This is not one trick. It is a complete system, and each piece builds on the one before it. And stay with me to the end, because I will share something Eli showed me about how the Amish time their soil work around a natural indicator that most of us walk right past every single spring. Once you know it, you will never guess at planting time again. Now, I want to be honest about something. For most of my gardening life, I treated soil like a container, something to hold roots while I poured nutrients on top. Every March, I would go to the garden center, buy a bag of 10, maybe some bone meal, maybe some blood meal, scatter it around, till it in, and figure I had done my job. And for a while, things grew fine. But fine is not the same as thriving. What I did not understand, and what nobody told me until I started paying attention to what my Amish neighbors were doing, is that I was essentially skipping the most important part of the whole process. I was feeding the plant and starving the soil. If you have been doing something similar, buying bags of synthetic fertilizer every year and wondering why your yields plateau or even decline over time, you are not doing anything wrong on purpose. I was right there with you for 2 solid decade. It took watching Eli's methods up close to realize there was a completely different way to think about what happens underground. Let me paint a picture for you. Eli has 11 people in his household, his wife, 9 children, and himself. That is a lot of mouths. And most of what goes on that table comes from a garden that is maybe a quarter acre, not a farm. A garden. Every row has to produce. Every square foot has to earn its place. There's no room for weak plants or half harvest. The Amish have a concept they call huishouden, which roughly translates to household keeping or careful stewardship of the home. It is not a spiritual idea as much as it is a survival strategy. When you have a big family and limited acreage, you cannot afford soil that gives you mediocre results. You have to build that ground up year after year so it gives back more than you put in. That is the mindset behind everything I am about to show you. This is not gardening philosophy. It is how real families produce real food in real quantity. And it starts with understanding that the soil is not just dirt. It is the engine that drives everything above it. Here is the foundation. And if you get nothing else from this video, get this. The Amish do not fertilize their plant. They build their soil. There is a critical difference, and it took me an embarrassing number of years to figure it out. When you apply synthetic fertilizer, you are delivering specific nutrients directly to the plant roots in a form they can absorb immediately. That sounds efficient, and in the short term, it is. But here is the problem. Those synthetic salts bypass the soil biology entirely. Over time, they actually suppress the microbial communities that make soil fertile in the first place. You end up on a treadmill where you need more fertilizer every year because the soil itself is becoming less alive. The Amish approach is the opposite. They add massive amounts of organic matter to the soil every single year, primarily well-aged animal manure and homemade compost. This does not feed the plant directly. It feeds the billions of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and earthworms that live in healthy soil. Those organisms break organic matter down into plant available nutrients at a steady, sustained rate. They also create soil structure that holds moisture, improves drainage, and allows roots to penetrate deeper. Here is exactly what to do. Every fall, after your last harvest, spread 4 to 6 inches of aged manure across your garden bed. Eli uses a mix of horse and cow manure that has been composted in a pile behind his barn for at least 8 months. The aging is important. Fresh manure is too hot, it will burn roots and can contain pathogens. You want material that is dark, crumbly, and earthy smelling, not sharp or ammonia-like. If you do not have access to farm manure, aged compost works. You need volume, though. Most gardeners add a thin half-inch sprinkle and call it good. The Amish are putting down 4 to 6 inches. That is a serious layer, and the first year you do it, it feels like overkill. But here is what happens. Over winter, that material breaks down and integrates into the top 8 to 12 inches of soil. By spring, you have a bed that is dark, loose, and teeming with worm activity. Research from the Rodale Institute in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, has shown that soils managed with consistent organic matter additions outperform synthetically fertilized soils in crop yield after just 3 years, and the gap widens every year after that. One zone note. If you are gardening in zones 3 through 5, apply your manure in early to mid-fall, at least 6 to 8 weeks before your ground freezes solid, so the initial breakdown can begin before winter locks everything up. In zones 7 through 9, you can apply as late as early winter and still get great integration by spring planting time. Now that your soil has a strong organic foundation, here is where things get really interesting. The Amish do something with compost that most of us never consider. They do not just make one kind. They make what Eli calls hot compost and cold compost, and they use them for completely different purposes. Hot compost is the fast stuff. You build a pile at least 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. Layer green material like kitchen scraps, fresh grass clippings, and garden waste with brown material like dried leaves, straw, and old hay in roughly equal layers by volume. You keep it moist, about the consistency of a wrung-out sponge, and you turn it every 5 to 7 days. The internal temperature should reach 130 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit within the first week. At that temperature, weed seeds and pathogens are killed. In 6 to 8 weeks, you have finished compost ready to use. Cold compost is the slow stuff. This is just a pile where you toss material throughout the year, kitchen scraps, garden trimmings, leaves, manure, and you let it sit. No turning, no monitoring. It takes 8 to 12 months to break down, but the result is incredibly rich in fungal life because the slow decomposition allows fungal networks to fully develop. Here is the key insight Eli taught me. Hot compost goes on your annual vegetable beds, your tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, anything you plant fresh each year. It gives a quick nutrient boost, and the bacterial dominant biology is exactly what annual vegetables thrive in. Cold compost goes around your perennials, your fruit trees, your berry bushes, your asparagus beds. These plants prefer fungal dominant soil, and the slow cold compost delivers exactly that. I had been using the same compost for everything for years, and wondering why my blueberries never seemed to respond the way my tomatoes did. The answer was right in front of me. Different plants want different soil biology, and the Amish figured this out through generations of careful observation long before modern soil science confirmed it. For your annual beds, work 2 to 3 inches of hot compost into the top 6 inches of soil each spring, about 3 to 4 weeks before transplanting. For your perennials, spread 2 to 3 inches of cold compost as a top dressing in late fall and let it work in naturally over winter. Do not dig it in around established perennials. Just lay it on the surface and let the worms pull it down. This is where I want to pause for a moment. What I have been sharing with you today is really just one piece of a much bigger system that the Amish use to grow enough food for large families on small plots of land. I put everything I have learned from Eli and other Amish neighbors over the past 30 years into a guide called Homestead, Hanks. It is called the 30-Day Amish Self-Sufficient Garden Protocol. And it is everything I have learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple, day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It has got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold. And it includes the companion planting field guide, so you know exactly what to grow next to what and why. So click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you will see it. Or alternatively, if you are watching on a television or a computer screen, you can take out your phone, open up your camera like you are going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that, and it will bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I think it is the best investment you can make in your garden this year. Here is a practice that completely changed my results. And it is one the Amish have been doing so long, they probably do not even think about it as a technique anymore. They never leave soil bare, ever. Not for a week, not for a day if they can help it. In conventional gardening, we harvest a crop, pull the plants, and leave the bed empty until next season. Maybe we till it in fall and leave it open all winter. To the Amish, that is like leaving money on the table. Bare soil loses organic matter, loses moisture, loses microbial activity, and becomes compacted. The Amish plant cover crops on every bed the moment a harvest is finished. And I do mean the moment. Eli has his cover crop seeds sitting on a shelf in the barn, ready to go. He pulls out his onions in late July, and by the next morning there is crimson clover seed scattered across that bed. Here is exactly what to use and when. For beds that finish producing in mid to late summer, plant crimson clover or buckwheat. Broadcast the seed by hand at about 2 ounces per 100 square feet. Rake it in lightly and water it once. Buckwheat grows fast and produces flowers within 4 weeks that attract pollinators and beneficial insects. Crimson clover fixes nitrogen from the air into the soil through a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in its root nodules. When you turn either of these under in fall, you are adding a fresh dose of organic matter and, in the case of clover, free nitrogen. For beds that finish in fall, plant winter rye. Scatter it at about 4 ounces per 100 square feet after your last harvest. Winter rye germinates in cool soil, grows a few inches before the ground freezes, goes dormant through winter, then explodes with growth in early spring. Its dense root system breaks up compaction and suppresses spring weeds. Turn it under 3 to 4 weeks before spring planting. In zones 3 through 5, get your winter rye in by mid-September, so it has time to establish before hard frost. In zones 7 through 9, you can plant winter rye as late as early November. The effect of consistent cover cropping is cumulative. After 2 to 3 years, you will notice your soil is darker, holds moisture better, has more earthworm activity, and your plants establish faster in spring. Eli has been cover cropping the same beds for over 20 years. When I push my hand into his garden soil, it sinks in up to my wrist. Mine used to feel like pushing into a packed dirt road. Not anymore, but it took 3 solid years of cover cropping alongside the compost applications to get there. This next part is where most people go wrong, and I include myself in that for a long time. It is about what you do not do to your soil, and it might be the most important shift in thinking of this whole video. The Amish do not till, or more precisely, they till as little as humanly possible, and many of them do not till at all anymore. I tilled my garden every spring and fall for over 15 years. I thought I was aerating the soil, working in amendments, giving roots a loose medium to grow in, and on the surface it looked great. Fluffy, dark, clean, rows. But here is what I was actually doing. Every time that tiller went through, it was shredding the fungal networks that are the internet of the soil. It was destroying earthworm burrows that provide natural drainage channels. It was bringing dormant weed seeds up to the surface where they could germinate. It was creating a hardpan layer 6 to 8 inches down, right where the tiller blades stop and the compacted soil begins. Eli never owned a rototiller. He works his amendments into the soil with a broad fork, which is a large two-handled fork with tines about 12 inches long, spaced 4 inches apart. You push it into the soil, rock it back gently to loosen without inverting the layers, pull it out, step back about 6 inches, and repeat. It takes longer than a tiller, yes, but it preserves soil structure instead of destroying it. Here is the practical switch. If you have been tilling for years, do one final shallow till in spring to work in your compost, then stop. From that point forward, use a broad fork for loosening and add all amendments as top dressings. Let the worms and soil biology do the mixing for you. Within 2 seasons, you will notice your soil holds together in crumbly aggregates instead of turning to dust or clumping into hard clods. That aggregate structure is what allows roots to breathe, water to percolate, and microbes to thrive. You can buy a broad fork from most garden tool suppliers for $30 to $50, and a good one will last decades. It is the single best tool investment I have made in 30 years of gardening. Now here is the final layer of the system, and it ties everything together. The Amish feed their soil from the top continuously throughout the growing season. They do this with mulch, and they use a lot more of it than most of us would ever think to apply. Once transplants are established and about 6 to 8 inches tall, Eli covers every inch of exposed soil with 4 to 6 inches of old hay or straw, not a thin dusting, a asadi, thick blanket. He gets his material from spoiled hay bales that are no longer good for animal feed, usually free or next to nothing from neighboring farms. This deep mulch does 5 things at once. It suppresses weeds almost completely, which means no hoeing, no cultivating, no disturbing the soil surface. It holds moisture so effectively that Eli waters about half as often as I used to. It moderates soil temperature, keeping it cooler in summer heat and warmer during cool nights. It provides a constant slow feed of organic matter as the bottom layer decomposes against the soil surface, and it creates perfect habitat for earthworms, ground beetles, and other beneficial soil organisms. The specifics matter here. Use straw or old hay, not fresh grass clippings, which mat down and can heat up enough to damage stems. Keep the mulch pulled back about 2 inches from the base of each plant stem to prevent moisture rot at the soil line. In zones 7 through 9, where fungal diseases can be a concern in humid summers, use straw rather than hay because straw has less residual seed and mold potential. By midsummer, Eli's garden looks almost like a hay field with vegetables poking out of it. But underneath that mulch, the soil is cool, moist, and alive with activity. His worm population is extraordinary. I have seen him lift a section of mulch and count 20 or 30 earthworms in an area the size of a dinner plate. Each one of those worms is processing organic matter and leaving behind castings that are 5 times richer in nitrogen, 7 times richer in phosphorus, and 11 times richer in potassium than the surrounding soil. That is not folklore. Those numbers come from research at Cornell University. Let me walk through a few patterns I see all the time, things that undermine soil health without most of us realizing it. The first pattern is relying on a soil test to tell you what to add, and then adding only synthetic amendment to hit those numbers. I did this for years. My soil test would say low in nitrogen, so I would buy ammonium sulfate and spread it. The numbers would look better on the next test, but my plants did not improve much. The Amish approach is to add broad spectrum organic matter, the compost, the manure, the cover crops, and let the soil biology make nutrients available to plants in the forms and timing they actually need. You are feeding the whole system, not plugging individual holes. The second pattern is treating soil as an annual project. Most of us think about soil in March and forget about it by June. The Amish are building soil 12 months a year. Compost in fall, cover crops in winter, mulch in summer, manure whenever it is available. There is no off-season for soil building. Every month is contributing to next year's fertility. The third pattern is throwing away organic material. Kitchen scraps go in the trash. Leaves get bagged and sent to the curb. Grass clippings get dumped. The Amish waste. Nothing organic. Everything goes back into the soil cycle. Eli has a saying that stuck with me. He said, "Nothing that grew should leave the property. It should go back into the ground somewhere." Once I started keeping every scrap of organic material on my homestead and composting it, my soil improvement improvement accelerated noticeably within a single season. The fourth pattern is compacting soil by working it wet. If you walk on your garden beds after a heavy rain or till when the soil is still sticky, you destroy months of structure building in minutes. The Amish test soil readiness by squeezing a handful. If it forms a ball that holds together when you open your hand, it is too wet to work. If it crumbles apart loosely, it is ready. I ruined an entire bed one spring by tilling after 2 days of rain because I was impatient to plant. The clods that formed took an entire season to break down. Now I use Eli's squeeze test every single time. Now, here is what I promised you at the beginning, and it is something I have never seen in a gardening book or heard from any extension agent. The Amish in Eli's community do not use a calendar date or a soil thermometer to decide when to begin their spring soil work. They watch the dandelions. When the dandelions in the fields and along the roadsides begin to bloom, that is the signal that the soil temperature has reached approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit at a 4-inch depth. That is the threshold at which soil microbes become active enough to begin processing the organic matter you have been adding. Planting before that point means your transplants are going into biologically dormant ground where nutrients are locked up and unavailable. Here is exactly how to use this. When you see the first dandelions blooming in your area, not your garden specifically, but in open sunny areas nearby, that is your signal to broad fork your beds and work in your spring compost. Wait 7 to 10 days after that first bloom and your soil biology will be fully awake and processing. Then transplant. I tested this against my old method of going by calendar date for 2 consecutive seasons. The plants I put in after the dandelion signal established faster showed less transplant shock and produced their first fruit an average of 9 days earlier than the ones I planted on my usual calendar schedule. 9 days from just waiting for a weed to bloom and trusting that the soil knew what it was doing before I did. Eli laughed when I told him how surprised I was. He said his grandmother taught him that, and her grandmother taught her. Generations of watching the land tell you when it is ready. No thermometer required. That is the full system. Build your soil with massive organic matter additions every fall. Use hot compost for annuals and cold compost for perennials. Cover crop every empty bed the moment a harvest is done. Stop tilling and switch to a broad fork to preserve the living structure underground. Mulch heavily through the growing season to protect, feed, and sustain everything you have built. And let the dandelions tell you when the soil is ready to go to work. Now, if everything I have shared today resonates with you and you want to take this further than one video can take you, I would really encourage you to check out the guide I put together. It is called the 30-Day Amish Self-Sufficient Garden Protocol, and it is everything I have learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It has got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold. And it includes the companion planting field guide, so you know exactly what to grow next to what and why. Now, there are 2 easy ways to grab it. The first way is to click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you will see it. The second way, if you are watching on a television or a computer screen, is to take out your phone, open up your camera like you are going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that, and it will bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching, either way works. I think it is the best investment you can make in your garden this year. I will be straight with you. This is not an overnight transformation. You will see some improvement the first season, but the real payoff comes in year 2 and year 3 when the biology in your soil reaches a tipping point and everything starts compounding. Eli's soil did not get that good in 1 year. It got that good over decades of doing the same things consistently. But even 1 year of this approach will show you a difference you can see and measure. And once you see it, you will never go back to the old way. way. If you try any of this, I would love to hear how it goes. Drop a comment and tell me what your soil looks like right now, what you are working with, and what you are going to try first. And if you want more of these breakdowns of how traditional growers get results that make the rest of us scratch our heads, hit subscribe. I have got a lot more coming. Thanks for spending your morning with me. Now get out there and go take care of that soil. I will see you in the next one.